Revenge with Karen.
The first red flag wasn't the missing bonus. It was the smell of frosting, cheap, store-bought, diabetic coma frosting, drifting through the plant break room like a bad omen. Carmen knew something was off the moment she walked in and saw Blake grinning beside a folding table littered with Paw Patrol balloons and a sheet cake that looked like it had survived a small explosion. Not a single spreadsheet in sight, a 12 feet of sugar coma, and a man in a Santa hat with the confidence of someone who'd never read a compliance memo in his life. "Team," he shouted, clapping his hands like we were preschoolers waiting for juice boxes. Big announcement. Carmen stood in the back, next to the ancient vending machine that still carried Zagnuts, clutching her clipboard like a crucifix. She just finished triple-checking the year-end renewal checklists, every permit, inspection log, operational certification, and was waiting on 2 signatures. One of them was Blake's. His inbox said read, but his follow-up said nothing. That didn't stop him from organizing a party like this place was a Chuck E. Cheese instead of a federally regulated medical packaging facility. Blake raised his arms like he was baptizing the room. No bonuses this year. Silence. A woman from accounting blinked. Someone dropped a pen. Carmen didn't move. No PTO buyouts either. He added with a dazzling, all-teeth smile. Instead, we're doing something way better. We're investing in memories, in family, in spirit. He reached under the table and started handing out invitations like he was opera on cold medicine. "You're all invited to my son Braxton's 6th birthday bash this Saturday. Giant bounce house, pony rides, gluten-free cupcakes. It's gonna be epic." Carmen looked down at the card she was handed. Had a photo of a kid in a cape, standing next to a sign that said Braxton's Battle Arena. A sword made of balloons arched over the words Heroes Only. Her mouth stayed shut, but her pulse ticked up like it always did before something went sideways. One of the forklift guys coughed and muttered, "The hell happened to our holiday checks?" Blake cupped his ear like it was a joke. "Oh, come on. You can't put a price on joy. Look, I know the old way was bonuses and PTO, but that was transactional. This is about building culture." Carmen bit the inside of her cheek so hard it went numb. Culture? The culture around here was duct tape, regulatory deadlines, and pretending the HVAC system didn't scream like a dying pig when it kicked on at 3 a.m. What culture meant now, apparently, was skipping annual payoffs and replacing them with a toddler's party and guilt-tripping your staff into attending like unpaid clowns. Still, she nodded politely when someone from HR shot her a look. Everyone else clapped, soft, unsure, and Carmen clapped too, softly, mechanically. Then she went back to her desk, sat down, and pulled up the compliance calendar. The system had a blinking reminder in the corner: annual facility license renewal signature required by December 22nd. Carmen had already sent 2 emails, one to Blake, one to the director of ops. Both read, both ignored. License wasn't just some boring paper-pushing ritual. It was the plant's lifeline. Without it, they couldn't operate. Full stop. Fines would stack faster than shipping invoices, and their biggest clients, hospitals, surgical suppliers, pharmacies, would pull contracts without blinking. She drafted a 3rd email. Subject: license renewal still needs signature body. Just a reminder the submission window closes next Friday. System will flag expiration on the 23rd if not submitted. Please advise. Carmen, she paused before sending it, glanced at the invitation again. Braxton's Battle Arena. Jesus Christ, she hit send. By noon, the email had been viewed twice, but there was no reply, no acknowledgement. The only thing that changed was that someone added her to a calendar event titled Holiday Cheer Huddle with a mandatory dress code, festive hats encouraged. She closed the invite, looked at the renewal tracker, still blank. Back in the break room, she could hear Blake's voice booming through the walls. "And don't forget to RSVP for the pony rides. We need to know headcounts for the gluten-free vendors." Carmen reached into her drawer, pulled out a sticky note, and wrote down the renewal deadline by hand. Then she pulled out another sticky note and wrote one more word beneath it. Ignored. The Monday after Braxton's Battle Arena, Blake called a meeting that felt more like a middle school pep rally than a compliance briefing. Everyone squeezed into the main conference room, still half covered in tinsel and sticky, with frosting residue from the leftover cupcakes HR insisted were up for grabs. Carmen took her usual seat by the door, close enough to hear, far enough to leave when her patience wore thin. Like swaggered in with a whiteboard marker and the kind of excitement that made Carmen instinctively check if her inbox had any legal warnings. He started drawing circles and arrows and labeling things like Synergy Flow and Happy Ops, all while wearing a hoodie that said Culture Eats Strategy for breakfast. It wasn't a joke. All right, folks, he beamed. New quarter, new structure, new us. Carmen's stomach sank. Reorgs were never about efficiency, were about plausible deniability when everything fell apart. And she knew Blake had the attention span of a Labrador in a tennis ball factory. The man couldn't finish a sentence without tossing in a hashtag. We're moving away from rigid departments, he said, using air quotes so aggressive it looked like he was flapping. No more silos. No more my job, your job. We're one team now, a family, a unit. Someone from Ops raised a hand. So, who handles compliance filings now? Blake grinned. Great question, Paul. That's operations now, which includes Tada, my new executive assistant Melinda. She'll handle all non-critical submissions. You know, permits, forms, all that red tape nonsense. Carmen blinked. Melinda, the new assistant, waved like she was at a pageant. Carmen recognized her immediately. Not from any prior role in regulated manufacturing, no. She recognized her from the breakroom bulletin board, where someone had pinned a flyer for a wellness wealth retreat hosted by Melinda herself. The tagline, "Take control of your future with Herbalife and Hustle." Carmen raised her hand. The facility's license renewal isn't optional. That form is not just red tape. It's a requirement to legally operate. It's also already overdue for submission. Blake gave a magnanimous nod, like she'd just given a TED talk about negativity. Thanks, Carmen, he said, but we're trying something new here. Less gatekeeping, more empowerment. I'm hearing a lot of control in your tone. That's not very festive. Let's not micromanage, okay? Trust the process. Trust the process? Carmen felt her knuckles crack as she gripped her pen. She knew the process now involved a woman who once used her company email to send out life coaching specials during Cyber Week. Still, she said nothing, just nodded like a good little elf. After the meeting, Carmen tried one last time. She found Blake in the hallway, leaned slightly into his path, and spoke low enough that it didn't cause a scene. I need to confirm who exactly is responsible for submitting the FDA renewal form, because if it's not done this week, we lose the operating license. Blake didn't even slow down. Operations, that's Melinda now, your compliance, right? Focus on your audits, smile more, it's Christmas. He vanished into the break room where someone had just turned on Jingle Bell Rock for the 5th time that day. Carmen didn't follow. She stood frozen, staring at a poster on the wall. It had Blake's favorite phrase in sparkly block letters, culture compliance. Someone had drawn a smiley face on the greater than symbol. Back at her desk, Carmen opened the internal filing dashboard. Melinda had logged into the system once. She'd started filling out the renewal form, but left 40% of it blank. The portal auto-flagged it as pending rejection. Carmen took a screenshot, printed it, filed it in the manila folder she kept at the bottom of her tote bag. She pulled up the compliance calendar and removed the team-wide auto-reminder for the renewal date. It was a small thing, a quiet thing, but it felt like pulling the pin from a grenade. She didn't say another word, not to Blake, not to Melinda, not to Ops. Instead, she started making copies, screenshots, paper trails, time-stamped records of every email, every warning, every ignored ping. Carmen wasn't loud. She wasn't angry. She was done reminding them. Silence was almost cinematic. 10 days out from the renewal deadline, Carmen sat at her desk, listening to the low industrial hum of the facility's HVAC system struggle against a Midwestern cold snap. No one had brought up the license. Not once. It was as if the most important document governing their entire operation had been swallowed by the same motivational smog Blake pumped into every department meeting. The calendar on her desktop still flashed red, renewal 9 days remaining. But it didn't flash for anyone else. Not anymore. She disabled the shared alerts the same afternoon Blake brushed her off with a saccharine smile more. A single click, one quiet confirmation. Now the only reminders lived on her private calendar, the one not connected to the company's Microsoft Teams circus. No more nudges. No more just checking in. No more corporate shoulder tapping, while someone bludgeoned her with phrases like family synergy and decentralized ownership. Carmen had spent the better part of a decade making sure every signature landed on every dotted line, on time, every time, without ever being thanked, promoted, or even remembered. She was invisible by design. Now, she decided to stay that way. Midweek, someone in logistics stopped by her cubicle with a mug shaped like a snowman and said, "Hey, going to the Secret Santa swap this Friday? Blake's giving away an Oculus or something." Carmen looked up, blinked once, and said no. The man awkwardly backed away with a chuckle, muttering, "Geez, okay. No need to sound like the ghost of HR future." She returned to her spreadsheet. Later that afternoon, Carmen overheard two junior engineers near the coffee machine joking about the compliance team. One of them snorted, "What even happens if we don't have a license? It's not like we're building rockets, we're just putting things in boxes." The other replied, "Exactly. Bureaucrats just love paperwork. We'd probably run smoother without M." Carmen didn't speak up. She didn't correct them. Instead, she opened her file drawer and added another printed email chain to the growing folder marked December unanswered. She'd begun printing everything. Screenshots of unread messages. Autoresponder replies. Outlook read receipts with no action taken. Every ignored flag from Melinda's botched application attempt. She didn't staple them. She didn't annotate them. Just stacked them with the detached efficiency of someone preparing evidence for a trial she'd already won. That night, she took the folder home and placed it under a false bottom in her desk drawer. Right below the unused yoga mat she kept to make it seem like she ever gave a damn about workplace wellness. House was quiet. The kettle hissed. She made tea and opened her laptop to recheck the regulatory portal. The status still read, "Incomplete action required." Carmen smiled, barely. The kind of smile that came not from joy but from finality. There was no turning the ship around. The deadline was approaching like a slow-moving iceberg, and everyone on deck was too busy choreographing team TikToks to notice the crack in the hull. She logged into her private email, drafted a message. Not to send yet, just to have ready. Subject: internal warning record non-responsive on FDA facility license body. This is to confirm that I submitted repeated warnings about the required renewal. See attached documentation for timeline and message history. No action was taken by the responsible parties. Attachments: Carmen warning log deck PDF. She saved it as a draft. Closed the tab. Took another sip of her tea. Following morning, HR sent out another email titled "Christmas Tree Family Culture Wins." Christmas tree, it featured a photo of Blake wearing an elf costume, holding his son on his shoulders, while someone dressed as a reindeer danced behind them. The caption read, "Building memories, not liabilities." Carmen let out a sound that wasn't quite a laugh and not quite a sigh. She stared at the photo until the words blurred, then clicked archive without a second thought. He didn't mention the deadline at the Thursday stand-up. She didn't ask if Melinda needed help. She didn't ping operations. She just sat quietly, taking notes with the same precision as always, nodding at the right moments while Blake droned on about the emotional ROI of holiday morale. Her phone buzzed under the desk. It was a notification from the regulatory board's portal. Subject: reminder your renewal application closes in 5 days. Carmen turned off her phone. Fine, she thought. Let it rot. The HR email came in with a subject line that made Carmen's molars ache. Braxton's birthday bash, mandatory team fun. Mandatory and fun, she thought, were two words that had no business standing that close together. The email featured 3 exclamation marks, 4 different font sizes, and an embedded gif of Blake's son trying to high-five a pony. The body of the message was worse. As part of our Family First December Culture campaign, we're proud to announce a team-building opportunity you'll never forget. Join us for Braxton's 6th birthday party this Saturday. Games, pizza, laughter, and real human connection. Below that, in bold red text, all departments expected to attend. Laughter heals. Absences will be noted. Carmen didn't delete the email. She archived it. On Friday, Linda stopped by Carmen's desk with a cupcake in the shape of a lightsaber. Her nails were bright pink and clicked against the frosting container. "You comin' tomorrow?" she chirped, her teeth blinding. "I'm dressing as Princess Leia, Blake's doing the Darth Vader voice, and the kids are gonna storm a bounce house Death Star." Carmen blinked once and said no. Melinda paused like she'd just been slapped with a salad fork. "Oh, it's just, he'll notice, I know." Carmen turned back to her screen. The next morning, in a Slack channel titled #Holiday Cheer, Blake posted a photo of himself with face paint, holding a plastic sword next to a sign that read Braxton's Galaxy Adventure. His caption read, "True leadership starts with family. Proud of my team for showing up." Only Carmen hadn't. And come Monday, the consequences began, quiet, passive, and corporate. Her name vanished from 2 internal meetings. Recurring compliance review she led was suddenly absorbed by ops. Melinda was now tagged on renewal updates. Carmen said nothing, just kept logging everything. Her folder, now up to 47 pages of internal correspondence, screenshots, and unread pings, was thick enough to feel like a legal threat if you dropped it on a desk. That same week, Regulatory Portal auto-generated a progress update. The submitted renewal was flagged as rejected incomplete application. A timestamp showed that Melinda had attempted to update the existing license using a form reserved for new facilities. She hadn't uploaded the required QA certification. She'd clicked I agree on sections that required technical review from engineering. And most damning of all, it entered the plant's capacity figures using the outdated square footage from 5 years ago before the expansion. Carmen stared at the portal, the rejection notice staring back like a quiet accusation. Status: rejected. Renewal deadline: 3 days. No further submissions accepted. She didn't move, didn't screenshot it, didn't print it, didn't even write it down. She just read it. Once. Slowly, carefully, like a poem she'd already memorized. She closed the tab. Across the aisle, 2 employees giggled over photos from the party. Someone had dressed the maintenance guy up as Chewbacca. In the background, Blake was doing finger guns at the camera while holding a foam lightsaber and a hard seltzer. Carmen picked up a highlighter and resumed marking a paper audit trail on her desk. Later that afternoon, Blake passed her in the hallway and gave a tight-lipped smile. "Missed you at the party," he said, casual but clipped. "Didn't see your RSVP." She kept walking. He added, louder this time, not very team player-wise, "Carmen, you know we're a family, right?" She turned just enough to meet his eyes. "I'm not in your family." Blake blinked like he hadn't rehearsed for that answer. She didn't wait for him to recover. That evening, Carmen stayed an extra hour, not out of obligation, but out of precision. She redacted a few older emails from her internal logs, emails that referenced Blake in a neutral or helpful light. She didn't delete them. She just added a note, context changed, relevance reduced. She packed the latest printouts into her folder and paused. For a second, she allowed herself to wonder what would have happened if anyone, had just asked her once if the renewal had been taken care of. But no one had. They were too busy choreographing group photos, hosting cupcake offs, mistaking morale for operational continuity. She turned off the lights, locked her drawer, and left the building. Behind her, the portal's rejection timer ticked down, 72 hours remaining. No further changes accepted, and still no one asked. The renewal window closed with all the thunder of a dying light bulb, soft, flickering, and ignored. No sirens, no email alerts, no frantic Teams messages. Just silence. The portal updated automatically at 9:00 a.m. Friday morning. Carmen refreshed the page once, saw the status change, license renewal period closed, application rejected, and let out the barest exhale. Not relief, not triumph. Just the faint sound a lock makes when it clicks shut for the final time. In the break room, Blake was passing around a poster for Braxton's bonus bash, last-minute thank you party for the departments who showed up with real spirit. Carmen, unsurprisingly, wasn't listed. Neither were 2 techs from QA who dared to ask if they'd still receive their PTO payouts. Blake had laughed and said, "No one earns a party. You live a party." Someone hung the poster on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a taco. The colors were blinding, neon yellow and blood orange. At the bottom, in Comic Sans, it read, "Inflatable slides, karaoke, optional group hugs." Carmen microwaved her Tupperware in silence, sat in her usual spot near the back exit, and listened to her coworkers discuss cake vendors and whether the cotton candy machine would be pink or blue this time. No one mentioned the renewal. No one even remembered it had been due. When someone from logistics brought up regulatory stuff, it was to complain about how compliance is just corporate astrology. No one actually understands it. Carmen took a bite of her chicken and rice and said nothing. Her face was unreadable, her posture straight. She ate like a machine, slow, methodical, unbothered. By 3:40 p.m., most of the floor had gone semi-feral in anticipation of Fun Friday. Speakers were wheeled into the shipping dock area. Blake was walking around with a Nerf gun and a Bluetooth speaker, blasting Pitbull's greatest hits. Someone put a lei around Carmen's monitor. She didn't remove it, she just typed around it. At 4:57 p.m., Carmen logged out of her workstation. She didn't wave, didn't nod, didn't say goodbye. She walked out into the freezing gray of an Ohio December, the sky so flat it looked painted on. Her breath fogged in the air. The parking lot was half empty. Most employees had been let go early for the festivities. Carmen sat in her car for a full minute before starting it, not because she was tired, because she was savoring the quiet. At home, she brewed a cup of black tea, no sugar, and opened the drawer where she kept her growing archive. The manila folder was full now, thick enough to bend. She pulled it out, pressed it flat, and began arranging its contents on the kitchen table like puzzle pieces. Chronological, indexed, annotated, emails, Slack messages, meeting invites, screenshots of unread pings, printouts from the regulatory portal with highlighted rejection codes, handwritten notes from compliance checklists. She moved with the calm efficiency of someone embalming the truth. At 7:12 p.m., she opened a new envelope, heavy, cream-colored, the kind with adhesive strong enough to seal a coffin, and placed 3 items inside. A printed copy of her final internal warning, time-stamped 4 days before the deadline. A signed affidavit she drafted herself, verifying the contents of the folder. A USB drive containing PDFs, audio clips from team meetings, and one 30-second screen recording of Melinda submitting the wrong form while humming "All I Want for Christmas Is You." She didn't seal the envelope just yet. Not tonight. But it was ready, lined up like the final move in a long, deliberate game. At 8:03 p.m., phone lit up with a company-wide text from HR. Reminder, Braxton's bash tomorrow at noon. Don't forget to bring your team energy. Party popper Carmen turned the phone face down. She went to the window and looked out at her quiet street, bare trees outlined in the orange glow of a distant street lamp. Somewhere, a neighbor's wind chime clinked like the last seconds of a timer no one set. She sipped her tea. No alarms, no sirens, no panic. Just the soft, visible sound of a company slipping beneath the surface. The note was duct-taped to the loading dock door in all caps, bold and clinical as a death sentence. Do not operate. License expired. Facility ordered to cease operations. Below that, a contact number for the state inspector's office and a formal citation code, FDC. Title 21, Part 820. The paper flapped slightly in the morning wind, right above the automated badge scanner that now blinked red. The early shift crew stood in a small, awkward cluster near the dock, bundled in high-vis jackets and confusion. Someone tried the side entrance. Locked. Another rattled the employee gate, but the motorized chain didn't even grunt in response. It took almost 50 minutes for word to spread from dock to floor. First, in whispers. Then, in Slack messages with shaky photos of the taped notice. By 7:10 a.m., every terminal login was throwing access errors. Printers jammed with system flags. Phones lit up with vendor questions, shipping delays, and most damning, client hold notices. At 7:32, Carmen arrived. She parked in her usual spot, walked past the buzzing crowd at the loading dock, gave the note a single glance, and kept walking. No reaction. No urgency. Just the same measured pace she used every Monday for the last 12 years. By the time she reached her desk, the building buzzed like a kicked beehive, voices echoing in stairwells. Conference room doors slamming. Somewhere in the suite above, the CFO had arrived, and he was not whispering. Carmen sat down, logged in, and sipped from a thermos of lukewarm tea she brewed that morning with exactly 2 bags, no sweetener. The chaos upstairs built like a thunderstorm you could hear, but didn't need to see. Then, the door to the executive wing burst open. CFO Thomas Woodall, a man who had once told a junior analyst to budget his emotions, marched down the hall with a crumpled envelope in one hand and a color-printed copy of the inspector's order in the other. He was crimson-faced, tie askew, one coat lapel flipped up like he'd dressed while sprinting. "Who let this expire?" he bellowed, voice cracking. Every head popped up like prairie dogs. Someone dropped a coffee. A woman in accounts actually ducked behind her monitor. Blake appeared from his office, adjusting his hoodie as if he'd just rolled out of a nap pod. "Tom, hey, whoa, what's going on?" "What's going on?" Woodall snarled, shoving the inspector's letter into Blake's chest, "is that we've been ordered to cease all operations. We've lost the license. There are semis parked outside that can't even unload inventory. We've got hospitals on hold wondering why their surgical kits aren't shipping." Blake tried to laugh. No, this must be a mix-up. That was supposed to be automated. Melinda handled the portal weeks ago. From across the floor, Carmen looked up from her screen and tilted her head slightly. Woodall threw the now crumpled letter onto the ground like it was radioactive. You think this is a mix-up? We're bleeding money by the hour, Blake. You understand what regulatory closure means in our industry. It means penalties. It means client audits. It means contract termination clauses are being read right now by legal teams who never forget. Blake blinked. I mean, Carmen was supposed to, but Woodall had already turned. Don't even try it. He pointed at Carmen. Did you submit the renewal? Carmen folded her hands in her lap and met his gaze evenly. No, I notified leadership multiple times that it was due. I was told to stop micromanaging and focus on team morale. That directive came directly from Blake. The room went quiet enough to hear the hum of the vending machine in the corner. Woodall turned slowly to Blake. Is that true? Blake's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Is that true? Blake tried again. I mean, I might have said that she was stressing people out with all the red tape. Carmen turned back to her monitor and opened a file. It was titled, Renewal Alerts Unacknowledged PDF. She didn't click send. Not yet, just hovered over the button. Waiting, upstairs, legal was already calling her desk. She let it ring. Blake was still stammering, sweat beginning to gather at his temples. Carmen, look, he tried, voice wobbling with a tremble that didn't quite reach apology. We're a family here, right? Let's not point fingers. Carmen looked up, just enough for her eyes to meet his. I already did my part, she said evenly. I told the truth. No one listened. Then she turned back to her screen and resumed typing. Behind her, Woodall's voice turned into something lower, colder, and more strategic. Words like negligence, liability, and termination protocols floated through the air like slow-moving bullets. And Carmen just kept typing. Unbothered, untouched, the eye of the storm. By Tuesday morning, legal team had commandeered conference room B like it was a war bunker. The blinds were drawn. No one came in or out without a clipboard and a laptop. Even the usually smug director of HR walked past the glass wall looking like she'd aged 6 years overnight. Inside, the review team was knee-deep in digital forensics, Outlook logs, Slack archives, compliance calendars, submission timestamps. By 10:13 a.m., he had unearthed the first red flag, an Outlook thread titled Renewal Deadline Time Sensitive. Carmen had sent it 5 weeks ago. It had been opened by Blake exactly 12 seconds after it hit his inbox. No reply, no follow-up, just opened, marked read, and buried beneath a sea of emojis and party planning threads. An hour later, they found the second thread. Subject line, Urgent License Renewal Status. This one had been forwarded by Carmen to Melinda after the first was ignored. Melinda responded with, Lol, okay boss man's got it clinking Christmas, followed by a gif of a snowman doing the floss dance. That same thread had a final reply from Carmen. Please confirm submission is complete. If not submitted by December 22nd, we will be in violation. I am not authorized to submit on behalf of operations. No response. Legal printed it, redacted nothing. Noon, they were scrolling through Melinda's access logs, which revealed a perfect digital trail. Carmen's warnings had been opened, viewed, and most damningly, forwarded to both Blake and Melinda's private inboxes, with the subject line PLS ignore, compliance nagging again. One message even had a laughing emoji reaction from Blake. That printout got passed silently across the boardroom table. No one made a sound. At 1:42 p.m., a new file surfaced. Wasn't from the company servers. It had arrived via the regulatory board's legal liaison in response to an internal audit request. It was Carmen's private email. Subject, non-submission of facility license, renewal internal documentation attached body. As a concerned employee, I am formally submitting a record of internal attempts to escalate the license renewal. All communications were timestamped, ignored, or dismissed. Attachments, full email chain, annotated submission log, and screen recording of portal status pre-deadline. The email had been sent 2 days after the license window closed. There was a moment, just a single breath-long pause, in the boardroom after that discovery, where even the company's outside counsel leaned back in her chair and said, well, that's not great. Downstairs, Carmen sat at her desk, unmoved. Her name was now being spoken in low tones all over the building by managers who used to breeze past her like she was wallpaper. The same people who once joked that compliance was just copy-paste now whispered her name like it belonged to a ghost who'd returned to haunt the living. Melinda had been crying in the bathroom for 20 minutes. Someone from HR offered her tissues and a mint. Blake hadn't been seen since 11 a.m. By 3 p.m., he was finally summoned, arrived with a too big water bottle and a too small sense of composure. Legal motioned for him to sit. He didn't speak at first, just waited, smiled nervously. Then he finally offered, "Look, I didn't realize the deadline was real. Like, Carmen usually handles all that." Legal slid the internal logs across the table, no commentary. He looked down and saw the email with his own reply, "PLS ignore, compliance nagging again." His face changed, like a man realizing the rope he'd been tugging on all month was tied to a noose, and it was already around his own neck. "She was stressing people out," he mumbled, "always making things sound dramatic. I mean, who knew one missed form would trigger this?" The GC leaned forward. "You did. She told you." Repeatedly. Blake flailed. "I delegated to Melinda." "I thought she submitted." A tech from IT slid over the printout of Melinda's access log. He hadn't submitted anything after the portal flagged the incomplete form. The screen recording showed her navigating away after 2 minutes to order unicorn cupcakes for the office. Blake tried again. "I mean, Carmen didn't escalate." "Check the calendar," one of the legal analysts said quietly, rotating her laptop. Blake leaned forward. On screen was the compliance calendar Carmen had once maintained for the whole company. Each red-boxed alert was marked "removed by admin December 4." Blake's own user ID was listed in the audit log beside the removal. He sat back in his chair, mouth open, nothing left to say. Upstairs, the board's chief liaison typed a new directive: immediate internal controls audit. All communications with regulatory boards to be routed through compliance lead, Carmen Alvarez. Downstairs, Carmen received a meeting invite titled Leadership Review Compliance Restructure. No subject line, no description, just a time and a location. She clicked accept. Then she minimized the window, folded her hands on her desk, and returned to her checklist. She didn't smile. This wasn't victory. This was just gravity, finally doing its job. The knock came at 6:07 p.m., long after the rest of the floor had gone dark. Carmen was in her office, not her usual cubicle, but the compliance conference room she'd quietly claimed 2 hours earlier without asking permission. She hadn't needed to. The atmosphere had changed. The floor's gravitational center had shifted, and it now orbited around the woman with the thick folder and the memory of every email anyone wished they could unsend. The door creaked open, and CFO Thomas Woodall stepped inside, tie gone, sleeves rolled, legal pad in one hand and what looked like defeat in the other. "Miss Alvarez," he said. She gestured to the chair across from her without looking up. "Carmen is fine." He sat. There was a silence. Not the awkward kind, but the kind that makes men like Woodall sweat. He cleared his throat. "I won't waste your time. We need help, badly. We're hemorrhaging accounts." The inspectors filed a public noncompliance report. "Contracts are freezing left and right." She finally looked at him, flat and calm. And he leaned forward. "Help us fix this. Whatever it takes. We'll pay double your current salary. You'll have your pick of staff. Hell, you want your own floor? Done." Carmen reached into her tote bag, pulled out a manila envelope, and slid it across the table. A single sheet of paper inside. Woodall opened it. It wasn't a resume. It wasn't a proposal. It was a list. Carmen Alvarez terms of engagement, full operational control over all compliance processes. No intermediaries. Immediate removal of Blake Landry from any chain of command related to compliance, documentation, or regulatory communication. Retroactive bonus pay for fiscal year, including missed incentive compensation. Direct reporting access to the board compliance committee. Permanent seat on quarterly audit reviews. Written acknowledgement, signed by executive leadership, of prior warnings provided and ignored. Carmen watched as Woodall scanned the list. No expressions, no outbursts, just the quiet speed of someone realizing negotiations were already over. He looked up. "Blake doesn't speak to me," she said. "Doesn't CC me. Doesn't schedule me. He's done. You want this fixed. He's not in the room." Woodall hesitated. That might not be. She tilted her head. "He's not in the room." Folded the paper. Understood. There was another pause, longer this time. Then Carmen stood slowly, deliberately, not posturing, not grandstanding, just rising like someone who no longer asked permission to take up space. "I'm not doing this for you," she said. Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't bitter. It was even, quiet, undeniable. "I'm doing it for the facility. For the people on the line who didn't get a say in any of this. For the contracts we earned the hard way. For the inventory you've got rotting in trailers while Blake schedules pony rides." Woodall didn't argue. He just nodded once slowly and rose to meet her. She extended a hand. He took it. Carmen added, "You'll get a signed copy of that agreement by noon tomorrow. Once legal adds the non-interference clause." He blinked. "The what?" She smiled, barely. "I'm not doing this just to have another frat boy micromanage from behind a slogan. I fix this, I run it. No interference. No synergy reviews. No more jokes about culture over compliance." Woodall let out a slow breath. "All right." She reached for her tea. "You'll have results by Friday. Assuming no one tries to empower me out of my own job again." He left. The door clicked shut behind him. Carmen sat down, stretched once, and reopened her laptop. The cursor blinked in a blank email. He started typing a subject line. Subject: Compliance Reinstatement Phase 1 downstairs. Someone tried to scan their badge at the dock entrance. Still locked, but upstairs. Carmen had just unlocked something else entirely. Blake walked into the boardroom like a man entering a surprise party he still believed was for him. Khakis, fleece vest, still wearing that damn optimism like it could deflect bullets. He even tried the charm routine, half smile, half shrug, like this was all just a hilarious misunderstanding, and not the scorched wreckage of a regulatory implosion he'd personally lit. The board was already seated. Carmen sat at the far end of the long table, a thick binder in front of her, spine straight, unreadable. The GC sat beside her, flanked by two external compliance auditors. Woodall stood by the window with the energy of a man who'd barely slept and was balancing on the last nerve he had left. Blake opened with, "So what's the mood? I brought donuts." No one responded. The board chair tapped a hand against the polished oak. "Let's begin." Woodall didn't speak right away. He let the silence settle like a fog. Then, without a word, he walked over to the table, reached into a folder, and pulled out the expired facility license. He slapped it down like a dead fish. "Tell us again," he said slowly, deliberately, "how family was enough." Blake glanced at the paper, then back at the room. "Okay, come on, we all know this stuff is just a formality. I mean, what's a few days?" Carmen reached into her binder and calmly slid out a packet labeled Client Contract Terms Immediate Nullification on Regulatory Lapse. She placed it next to the expired license. "You lost 3 hospital accounts before 9 a.m. this morning," she said, her voice even, almost conversational. 2 more are reviewing their legal options." Blake still tried to grin. "All right, if this is about a missed deadline, I take full responsibility. My assistant dropped the ball. I'll have a word with her. She's already been removed from access," the GC interrupted. "This isn't about delegation. This is about deliberate disregard. We found the emails, the Slack messages, the forwarded warnings labeled PLS Ignore." One of the board members finally spoke. "You laughed at a direct regulatory warning." Blake looked at Carmen, desperation leaking through the cracks in his veneer. "You could have said something sooner. I mean, you always handled that stuff before." Carmen folded her hands. "I did say something, over and over. You told me to stop micromanaging, so I did." Woodall turned to the IT liaison in the corner and gave a subtle nod. On his tablet, the liaison tapped a button. Blake's phone buzzed. He looked down. "Access terminated. Badge revoked. System removed." B. Landry, his mouth opened. Nothing came out. Carmen didn't look at him. She opened a leather folder and removed a fresh renewal form, already filled out, reviewed, updated to meet the new state and federal guidelines, signed by all necessary department leads except one. She took a pen from the folder. The board chair pushed the old license aside, clearing the space. Carmen signed the new one. Clean, efficient, final. Woodall exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for a year. "Submission goes out today. Inspectors already been briefed." The board chair turned to Carmen. "You're running compliance going forward. Independent oversight. No interference." She nodded once. Not humble, not smug, just certain. Blake, still standing, finally stammered, "So that's it? I'm just done?" The board didn't answer. Carmen did. She stood, gathered her materials, and walked to the door. Just before she stepped out, she paused. "I didn't go to your son's party," she said without turning around. Then she looked over her shoulder, eyes like polished steel. "But I did keep the lights on." Thanks for joining the fun, you office survivors. Subscribe for more switch-flicking drama. Let's make your former coworkers sweat.